A confederacy of Dwights. Milo scanned the overgrown city with disbelief. The Dwights, as he called them, were still pretty drunk from his homemade moonshine. Most of them could barely hold themselves up as they staggered around the dissipating fog, shooing away mosquitoes, flies, and pesky crows as they tried to make sense of where they were. Milo had arranged a mandatory team-building excursion to teach the geeks of his company a lesson in humility for having reported him to the HR department for inappropriate behavior. Now he was stuck with them in some sort of post-apocalyptic hell. His plan had clearly backfired. His moonshine had poisoned them all, and he was being punished. This was his own personal hell, to be stuck with the Dwights throughout eternity. Things he was sure couldn't get any worse. He cursed under his breath and kicked a stone violently. Then, as he watched the Dwights stumbling about the ruins, he suddenly realized their leader was missing. Meanwhile, in another world, Dwight held his pounding head in his hands as he pushed through the bramble, calling out for Milo and his co-workers. He stopped suddenly when he came across a thick wall of fog that seemed strangely alive. He wasn't sure if he should continue forward or turn around and hightail it out of there. Arcus, 10,306. Hunters of the Void. These survivors originated from an unexplored, lost realm. They weren't expelled to the Void, but somehow escaped their realm through a ruptured barrier. I have read how these survivors hunt the endless creatures of the Void, and it has been suggested by several works of fiction that they have found a way to not only survive, but thrive in a town they built out of the waste salvaged from the discarded realms. The Lost Battalion. War was nothing like Evan had read back home at the Macmillan estate. It certainly wasn't honorable with its prolonged misery, apprehension, hunger, and incompetent officers ordering soldiers like sheep to the slaughter. And yet killing came easy to Evan, easier than the other soldiers from his town. Evan seemed to enjoy hunting the enemy more than deer or any other game without understanding why. It seemed to satisfy a need he never knew he had until he defied his uncle and joined the war effort overseas. Now there weren't many men left in the flooded, vermin-infested trench. They were all dead or dying from a day of endless raids and shellacking. Evan had made it clear to the others that he wasn't going to wait idly for death, and so he gathered volunteers to help him rush the enemy trench across no man's land. 15 men had followed him to the makeshift ladder. He gave them all a grave look as he pulled down a blood-covered mask he had fashioned out of bone and shrapnel to protect his face from bullets, debris, and poisonous gas. The soldier beside him heaved a deep breath and blew the whistle. At once, the soldiers followed Evan over the top. With incredible speed and determination, he evaded barbed wire and bullets as he closed the distance. Fearlessly, he leaped into the enemy trench and took out the enemy gunner. Then he turned to face enemy soldiers charging at him with rifles, swords, and shovels, panicking and screaming in a language he didn't understand. And there, in the endless melee, Evan didn't stop kicking and stomping and bayoneting until a thick fog like molasses rose from the mud to engulf them all. When the fog dissipated, Evan and his men found themselves in another world. A strange and uncanny world, similar to the one he had read about in a horror serial he had picked up at the train station. "Where are we?" one soldier finally asked, stepping beside Evan. A roar followed by an agonizing scream sounded in the distance. Evan lifted his mask and considered for a moment. "Definitely not Oz." His voice died as he saw a giant creature with massive tentacles heading their way. Someone panicked and yelled something in German, but Evan couldn't take his eyes off the impossible creature advancing towards them. ARKHAM 10,307. Ha ha ha, not funny. A realm designed and manifested by a trouble-making imp prompted by her endless search for entertainment. The realm juxtaposes survivors and killers from manifold worlds and timelines, making a parody of the trials. It is said the only way to stop her is to write her name backwards 3 times. But like the fabled Rumpelstiltskin, no one actually knows her real name. The Magnificent Maurice, 4. Of course, it was only a short time before I had names for the other pups. I named one 7, on account he always barks 7 times every time he's startled. Another I named Bugsy, 'cause she spends all her time chasing beetles and crickets and hoppers all over the forest. And still we called another Chief, or sometimes Chief Roo, 'cause he likes to tell everyone what to do and makes a rhubarb out of everything not done his way. The last pup asked me if she could have her mother's name. If that is, I didn't mind so much. I didn't mind at all. Told her so. "Thanks, boss," she said. She didn't have to thank me, 'cause she was right. Willow was the most perfect name for her. Everything about her reminded me of her mother. ARKHAM 10,313. The 9 Forgotten Symbols of Vigo. Symbols discovered by Vigo while meditating in his dungeon before he willingly entered the living dimension known as the Entity. The symbols are said to open portals into unknown realms within this dark world. It's been speculated that these symbols, in the correct sequence, can be used to return home. Saga of the Red Crane, Out of Darkness. Saku awakened in the cool mist. She didn't remember when she stopped falling, or why she didn't shatter like a porcelain doll against the ground. On the contrary, she felt strong, rested, rejuvenated, like someone who had just awoken from a deep, eternal sleep. "You're not supposed to be here." A young Japanese girl in a white and black kimono materialized from the mist. Saku looked up at her. "I'm here." She sat up slowly as the mist began to manifest into scenes of her life. She could hear a cacophony of laughter, singing, arguing, and crying. She looked into the young eyes and recognized the little girl from a half-forgotten memory. "You are here because you want to return home, to your family." "You're not real." "I'm as real as anything here." The girl stared at Saku, silent, patient, still. Then she continued. "You have many questions, but the one that you want answered most has no answer. You want to know where you are. Yet I can no more explain where you are than I can explain the Great Serpent. You're one of the Guardians. Who I am, or what this is, or how it all works, doesn't matter." Saku rose slowly. "Then what does matter?" "That it works." Saku scanned the scenes of her life in the mist and sighed deeply. The girl continued. "The same darkness that brought you here can be used to return you. You'll wake up in your mother's arms, and this will all be a bad dream you'll very quickly forget. Or," the girl's voice trailed away. Saku narrowed her gaze. "Or you could travel between worlds to finish what you started." Suddenly, screams of terror split the air as the mist began to reveal scenes of Black Serpent disciples destroying lives. as they had once destroyed hers. Saku closed her eyes, taking in a deep, shuddering breath. A cacophony of laughter and screams swelled in her mind. Then the sounds ceased all at once. Her eyes snapped open, and she knew exactly what she wanted to do.